And also I would like to say thank you again for your invitation. I'm very happy that I'm here at the EMU after a long time period. Today we're going to look at two case studies. One is about the Kyrenia ship and the other one the statue of Artemis. Two are from underwater. So today we're going to look at the underwater archaeological sites and their remains and how they excavated it, how they conserved and how they're displaying today. And also I want to discuss about display techniques. They're all from old times, from 80s, 90s. So you're going to be an architect, so you should think about how we can display some of the objects in the ancient buildings as well. In the beginning, I want to talk about underwater archaeology. So we know what is archaeology, that we're doing it, in the field. Underwater archaeology, you do this systematic study into the water. So there are some advantages and disadvantages from the field. So underwater archaeology, it's a subdiscipline involving the study and investigation of archaeological sites, deposits and shipwrecks beneath the surface of the water in the seas, oceans, lakes and rivers. In the beginning, we're going to look at this statue of Artemis. First of all, we're going to look at the history, how it was discovered. In 1980, one Italian tourist accidentally he found two pieces, as you can see on the picture, near Salamis region. And at that time, archaeologists from the Department of Antiquities cleaned it, and today this statue is displaying in Güzel Yurt Museum. And last year in 2017, one missing piece is found by Recep Hançerli. He brought this piece to the Department of Antiquities, and we start to do conservation process. But before that, I want to talk about the important significance of the Artemis statue. So, what is the importance? And it's one of the Cypriot cultural heritage. So the one on the left, it's Artemis from Ephesus. It's found in 1956. So and today there are 13 Artemis statues all around the world. Some of them in Spain, in Ephes. We found one in Cyprus and also in Syria as well. In Roman time, we start to see these statues, in the area which Roman Empire exists. I want to also talk about the details on the statue. As you can see, both statues are very symmetrical. There are three discs on her head. As you can see, there are griffins on her left and right side. There's a disc. Some people are representing that it's a moon. So Artemis also, it's representing the universe. It represents the protection of the nature, representing Mother of the Earth as well. So that's why you can see lots of animals on her body. And in our context, there are 36 breasts. As you can see, there are two lines here, and her hands are missing, and there are a lot of griffins on her legs as well. And he has two deers, and as you can see here, one is missing, and her hands and feet are missing. It's very important. Artemis is really, really important. And we saw the goddesses throughout the time. We start to see, the goddesses, statue of goddesses from Neolithic time till Roman time and Hellenistic time. Just names changing. For example, we had Cybele, we had Artemis, we have Aphrodite, for example. They're representing the mother of the earth, fertility. They're representing protection of child. And this was the piece that last year Recep Hançerli found. This piece came to our laboratory. You can see it's made of marble. It's all covered by some organisms from the seabed. And if you look at this area carefully, you can see that it has a hand. So first process was desalination process. In the underwater, when you find objects, it contains a lot of salt. So we don't want this salt really because it affects the object. So when you take the objects from the underwater, you have to put it into the water again. You have to put it into the box. And desalination process, we measured the water, we measured the salinity, and twice a week we changed the water to get rid of the salt. And this process took about 1 year. Here you can see the photos before conservation process and the object into the box. And the photo, it's showing the picture after the desalination process. And then we finished this process beginning of this September, and we went to the museum. As you can see, the museum, the display case is made in 1980, so it represents, I'm not criticizing them, they did it according to their times, but we have to change these, displaying techniques, displaying system. And we took all 3 pieces outside from display cases, and here you can see that we were working on the objects. And what we did, this was a pedestal that it was found in the 80s. And this is a new year that Recep Hançerli found in 2017. So what we did, we used steel wire, and then we finished the conservation process. And then her left hand. And also we put all the pieces back together, and she has all animals and family are together now. So what I want you to think about that, you are going to be an architect, so you have to think about it, how we can design these display cases. What we have here, it's very important, it has a lot of significance. It's one of the most important piece for Cypriot cultural heritage. But displaying isn't really good. So displaying system is giving this value to the object. And then this, last August, Center for Archaeology, Cultural Heritage and Conservation and the Department of Antiquities started survey in the underwater to see if there are any other objects around this site. So we have to look if there's anything. Because 2 pieces came from this side. The center is directed by Müge Şevketoğlu. You can see her here, and she's here as well. She's really big support for us. And this was the group photo. We did first step this August. We started the coastal surveying project, and next year we're going to improve this, and we're going to answer some of the questions about the study of Artemis. Now I want to talk about the Kyrenia ship. So the ship, it's displaying in Kyrenia Castle, and it's dated back to 4th century BC. From C14 datings, the date is 389 BC. So it represents one of the Hellenistic ship. It represents Hellenistic carpentry. From the history. So let's think about that. Sea traveling was one of the very important thing at that time, and especially in Bronze Age it was very, very important. So people were traveling from one place to another. They were carrying goods, they were carrying people, and it's imagine it's one of the safest, fastest and most economical way to travel at that time, because you only use human power and wind. And as I said, it represents 4th century carpentry. So now, because of this example, we know how they construct their ships, and we know about their cargo as well. So according to cargo from Kyrenia Shipwreck, we can't exactly say that this ship was coming from west to east or from east to west, But from remains, we can just guess that it was calling at Samos, Rhodos, Kos, Anatolia, and Cyprus, because cargo has carrying some remains from Rhodos, for example. The team found lots of amphoras from Rhodos. There was one Cypriot amphora. We're going to look at all these remains in detail. And also, Cyprus was exporting a lot of copper at that time, that's other thing. And nails, for example, from Kyrenia Shipwreck, they did analysis and they came, all the copper sources came from Cyprus. So Cyprus, has a lot of value at that time for sea traveling. So the ship, why did she sink? So there are some reasons, because of the age of the ship, storm, cargo, piracy, and, question mark, curse tablet, because they discovered one tablet, so it's one of the possibilities. And one example is displaying in British Museum. In Roman time, in Hellenistic time, they were doing these kind of things. Ship, age of the ship, we said. Maybe it happened, storm happened, maybe the cargo was so heavy. So 2 reasons, because of 2 reasons, and the ship did sink. So the ship firstly hit to the seabed and it broke in 2 pieces. So they discovered 2 pieces on the seabed. Andreas Carlo, he was living in Kyrenia and he was collecting sponges from the seabed, and he was selling these sponges in the harbor. And in 1965, he found this. We call it amphora mount. This was the first image that he saw, but he realized the importance and significance of the ship, and he kept it as a secret. He didn't tell anybody. And in 1967, Michael Ketzer and Susan Ketzer, both of them were doing research in Karpaz Peninsula. And then they went to Kyrenia. So first of all, I heard all these stories from Susan Ketzer, Lena Sweeney, and Robin Peasy. These were the people who excavated on the site. And they talked with fishermen first, and then Andreas Carlo told to Michael Ketzer that he saw a lot of amphoras on the seabed. So this was the ship that they were doing underwater, they were doing the systematic research at that time, and this was first jump. But in the beginning they couldn't find the site, because they didn't have any GPS system or something. So according to Robin Piracy, he said they did about 200 dives to find the site. So it's somewhere there, but where? So it was hard, they said. So in the beginning they labeled each object. So this is a kind of documentation system that we're doing. We give inventory number or labels to them. We take photos, we record them, we draw them, and then we start to lift the objects to the ground. And here you can see a grid system. This is a grid system, how they excavated the site. But they used metal detector, so they couldn't use metal grid lines. So that's why they decided to use plastic pipes. They were really, really clever. And this is one of the photos that it shows the tip part of the hull, and you can see that they gave numbers to each frame. And I want to also say that there were an architect in this project. They were doing, they were planning all these pieces. So you can involve in this project, but you need to get, your certificates. And you need to get some information about nautical archaeology. So this is kind of, system how we excavated the underwater. And airlift systems is another technique. So they found, huge hull, so they couldn't carry to the ground. So what they did, they cut the ship piece by piece, and then they lifted with this system. And still today we're using this. We call it airlift technique. And they carried all the pieces to the Kyrenia castle. And Frances Vassiliadis, she was a conservator in the project. She used polyethylene glycol 4000, so it's a kind of treatment that we use for waterlogged material. So here you can see the water is a little bit darker, so that's why all the wooden materials became a little bit dark. It's a kind of wax. You need to put, you need to put objects into this water, let's say, because wood is very hygroscopic. Wood is a kind of hygroscopic material, so it means that it takes a lot of water. It's very sensitive. It can expand, it can shrink because of the relative humidity, changing humidity and temperature. So here you can see that she was working on ceramics. So she did really great work. That's why we can see all the objects in robust today in Kyrenia Castle. And some photos from desalination process. They created a tank from metals, and they put all pieces from the hull into the tanks. So they change the water. They get rid of the salt. And Lena Sweeney, she was an architect. Well, she's an architect, and in this project she was making drawing. They said they were about 6,000 pieces, and here you can see the plan of the ship. 60% of the hull preserved very, very well, and it's one of the very best ratio from 4th century, BC. And today, one of the oldest ship, it's Ulbrun ship, it discovered in Kash. It's dated back to 3,300 BC. The second one, last month, they discovered one ship maybe you heard about from Black Sea. It's dated back to 2,400 BC. And Kyrenia ship, it's 2,300 BC, so she's in third rank. So built mostly of pine brutia, but they're still doing analysis. So we're waiting for the volumes. They're still working. Original team still working on the volumes. And the technique, it's shell first construction. So this is the way how they construct the ship. So they did keel first, and then they constructed planks. So outside first, and then they put frames in it. So the technique is called shell first construction. So this is a kind of carpentry and kind of technique that they used in the Mediterranean at that time. And in Kyrenia ship, we can see these details as well. We call it mortise and tenon joints. So there are some holes in the planks, and we call these holes mortise and tenons. So this is how they built the ship, and they used pegs from wood. So they locked the mortise and tenon joint tenons with this system. And here you can see one example from mortise and tenons. And then after building planks, they put frames inside, and they used nails to hammer them. And all the nails made of copper, and they were all coming from Cyprus. Steffi, he was the one that he put all pieces back together. He interested shipbuilding. So he did really, really great work. And here you can see, these photos are from his book, but he passed away, so his son published his book, and it's called The Men Who Thought Like a Ship. It's a very nice book. And after he finished the work, and today. There are a lot of metal structures that they're all supporting the ship from outside. And here you can see Robin Piracy. He realized that especially the northern part of the hull is a little bit expanding outside, so the ship has little problems. Let's look at what she was carrying. She was carrying 29 milestones, and they generally, the team found generally at the bottom. So maybe ancient people were merchants. They put it for balance because they were so heavy. And different types of amphoras. And this one is from Cyprus, and they found 426 amphoras. So imagine they were carrying olive oil and wine, So that's why maybe they thought because of cargo ship did sink. And the team found almond shells. Here you can see that they're a little bit darker because of polyethylene glycol. And in underwater, you can find organic materials like almond shells, wood, textile. They can preserve very well because of organism, there's oxygen, especially if you think that all the sand covered the ship, there's no oxygen. Similar example we can see in the desert. In Egypt, for example, they can find mummies because of less oxygen and hot weather. And for example, the other examples are bogman, for example, from lake. And into the ice, like you can find also organic materials. Iron billets. So these are the core materials. So merchants were selling these materials to some cities, and they were making iron tools. They found different kind of ceramics, 2 spoons, but they found 4 of them. So the team think about that. The crew were 4 people, but no remains, no human remains. They couldn't find any, skeletons. There are some drinking vessels as well, some knuckle bones for game. So iron javelins. They found these, artifacts under the hull. So that's why people think that because of piracy, the ship did things. So, or maybe, crew were holding it for protecting themselves. So we can't say exactly, what was the reason. And they found in one coin and made of silver, and it represents Athena and Kerstapet. This is the one. They didn't realize it on the seabed, but when they carried to the castle, then they realized it. They realized this tablet. It was a kind of this big, and they found it in somebody hammered into the planks inside the ship. So this box made of lead, and this nail made of copper, and they decided to open it. So here you can see. Photo, and they saw also remains of rope inside. So, and again, similar examples. There are similar examples in British Museum, and they did replicas as well. Steffi did this one. It's called Kyrenia 2, and they made it in 1985. Kyrenia 2 is still sailing in Limassol, so you can go and see the ship. And Kyrenia 3, it sails in New York as well, but today it's displaying in Japan, it's in the museum. And Kyrenia Liberty, it's in Ayanapa Museum, in Thalassa Museum. I'm going to talk about this for design a little bit later. And they decided to do experimental archaeology as well, so they produced 400 amphoras, and they tried to fit into the ship, and also they covered it with goat skin, but they couldn't manage to fit it. So this is the image. And then in the beginning, the original team thought that this was the highest level of the ship, but then they decided to increase this level because of the cargo. So as I mentioned before, the ship is displaying in this room. So you enter from here, you can get a lot of information about the ship, and then the next room you can see all the remains and ship gallery, which is controlled by air conditions. So the temperature has to be between 20 and 22 degrees because of the wax. You have to keep it cold. Yes. And also I want to talk about the museum, because it's a historic museum made of limestone, and it has problems. And what it's displaying inside, it's historic as well. So ceiling has problems, as you can see. Water is, rainwater is affecting the stones, and inside the gallery. Here, some photos that are showing some, pieces of crystals from the roof, pieces of mortars. And also dust is coming from the roof as well. Sometimes pieces are falling down on the platform, so my responsibility, is to sometimes trying to put them back like a puzzle. There are a lot of pieces, as you can see. Generally, Robin Piercy collected all pieces, and I learned the work from him. And also, you know, I was doing like a cross, like here, so we try to put all the pieces back together. And here you can see the level of the dust on the platform. So once a year, I'm cleaning the ship to protect it from the dust, because we don't like dust. It absorbs a lot of moisture, you know, it's more chemical things, but we don't like dust on the objects. Here again you can see differences before cleaning and after cleaning, a lot of spider nets around the ship. Again, you can see you know, pieces of mortar and salts from the roof, and again, you know, the differences. The level of the dust it's really, really high. And I realized that especially northern part of the ship has a lot of dust than this side. So that means, you know, building has problems, especially northern side has more problem. Again, and this is outside the ship, so you can get the sense of, you know, veins and nails, and you can get the sense of color as well. But inside, you know, a lot of dust is standing on the wood, so it changed the color as well. What I'm doing once a year, we're cleaning the ship with changing brushes and nozzles, but also this cleaning system, it has a lot of risks actually. We don't want to, you know, damage the ship. It's very fragile now, so that's why we're doing it once a year before tourism season starts. So this is the technique, that's how we're cleaning the ship. And Robin Piercy here, he constructed this cradle. So we're wearing backpack vacuum cleaner and we're cleaning the ship like this. Again, before cleaning and after cleaning. Before cleaning and after cleaning. Sometimes we use alcohol. Because you can see that it turns a little bit white, so we put alcohol and it evaporates very quickly, so it's not damaging the wood. Again, we put alcohol here and no alcohol, so it's huge differences. And also, other responsibility that I'm doing for this ship, it's measuring the content of humidity. And what I realized that especially this area, and this area has less moisture, because two air conditions are, blowing just in this area. So that's why it has a lot of less moisture. It has problem as well because it can shrink. So let's look at display. So monitoring, museum lighting, display cases, presentation technique, caring for visitors and meeting their needs and advertisement. So this photo is showing the balcony, how visitors are coming to gallery and looking at the ship. So they can enter from here, they can see ship until here, and they have to go back to the other room. So it has problem. Sometimes 50 people are, standing on this balcony, and they can't see outside the ship as well. So that's another problem. Today, you can only see this amphora because people are touching the objects, and also because of condition of the objects, the team remove these remains. So, and as I said, I'm not judging because I'm not judging to the display cases or the techniques. It happened in the past, but we have to change this. We have to, present these objects in a different way. We have to use modern, technology, different techniques. And here you can see this is a replica of the ship, but as you can see here, people are touching them. Again, you can see that these edges turn black because people are touching them, and our hands contain salt and oil. So when we touch the objects, it turns black and we're damaging it. And again, same examples here. In the beginning, I mentioned about that, the building is historic as well. So when people start to climb to the gallery to see the ship, they're holding the wall, and here you can see that the walls turn black as well. So something that, and Kyrenia Liberty, they're displaying there. So visitors start to see the ship from top, and they're all coming this level and see the ship from different levels. It's one of the best way, I think, to display the ship. Again, this is another displaying techniques that you can walk on it. These are not the original; they're the replicas, but it's good to get an idea and sense from the ship. Mary Rose Museum in England. So here you can see the glass that people can come and still conservation process is happening. So they allow the visitors to come and see the wreck at the same time. And lighting, it's wonderful. You can get a sense of dramatic, it's wonderful. And it's not damaging the ship. Lighting also, that this is another issue that you have to think about. Strength of the light, UV levels. You have to think all these when you design, to display the objects. And Khufu Museum in Egypt, near Khufu Pyramid, they found one bot in this site, so they decided to build the museum. You have to wear, cotton shoes, and because they don't want the dust in the museum. And this is the display. So what they did, they use less windows on this side, and they use more windows on this side because of the sun. So they use generally natural light in this museum. So ventilation system is perfect. People can go all around and see the ship from different levels. This is another photo from a different angle. Yes, this is the original team. Steffi, Michael Ketzer, Susan Ketzer, Francis, Robin Piracy, and Lena Semini. They did really great work in 60s and 70s. So what we have to do, we have to look after this cultural heritage with using modern techniques, with using different kind of things to preserve these remains for the future generation. That's the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you all for listening to me.